Video games are hard.
Kind of a bold statement, I know, but think about it. There's a wide variety of genres, with sub-genres inside of those, each with different control schemes, gimmicks, difficulties, optional activities, and jump buttons.
In Sonic Generations, you're jumping with the X button. In Kingdom Hearts, you're jumping with the circle button. In Breath of the Wild, you're jumping with the X button, but the X button's different because it's on the top. It's hard.
So it's a real challenge for developers to come up with a good tutorial. Now, many people may point to classic examples of Super Mario Bros. And Mega Man X, and while those are excellent examples, games have become a lot more complex, and now may have one more dimension to consider. There are now different levels of players who will go into a game with different amounts of experience, and knowing that those crucial starting minutes could be what turns someone away from the game entirely, yeah, developers have quite the task ahead of them.
Of course, developers have this really difficult problem. You want to be able to make sure your player knows exactly what they're doing, but you don't want to bore them with 200 text boxes and hour-long tutorials. So where's that sweet point? How can you teach a player everything they need to know without boring them? Well, one game which stood out to me was Breath of the Wild. And one of its best parts was actually its opening hours. Now, I'm not saying the rest of the game is bad, I do love this game a lot, but I think the tutorial is amazing, and I'm sure everyone's played the tutorial, but I want to go over it. Let's talk about that.
Breath of the Wild is an absolutely amazing game. 10 out of 10s across the board, huge fan reception, and it happened to be the launch title for the Nintendo Switch, meaning it could show off everything about this new system and, most importantly,
you can do all of this on the toilet.
But I think there are a range of factors as to why I personally love this opening. Firstly, well, the starting area is kind of a mini template of the entire map of Breath of the Wild. Huge flat plains, ice-covered peaks, tall, very vertical mountains, lush forests, and ruins with demise just waiting around the corner. There are 4 main objectives for you to clear in different parts of the map with an end goal to work towards, and generally you're given total freedom to explore. Very similar to how the main game gives you 4 main objectives and the main end goal. You have to clear objectives, but you're only given subtle hints how to do so outside of Zelda. She'll give you 1 point on your map to go to, and then leave you alone. This area is completely free to explore, and even though you'll be limited without the runes to explore different parts, the game lets you go at your own pace. But let's examine this a bit more closely. The best place to start is, of course, the start, with the game just having Link wake up, no recollection about the world he's in, no recollection about whose voice this is, just good morning. And the game gives you immediate control. The Sheikah Slate is the only thing that you're meant to do, but I think it's important that the game doesn't grab it for you. You do. The player has to know how to move the character, and they can view other basic controls. I think this is a lot more effective because, well, every game requires you to move somehow. The game doesn't tell you how to move, but it's fairly obvious if you've played the video game before. The next room features chests to interact with, giving you a shirt and a pair of pants. This teaches the player about chests and armor, I guess. Physically, Link is wearing more clothes, and although that 1 number won't really mean anything right now, you can tell that clothes may be better for defense than no clothes. And even if you want naked Link, it might be cold out, put a shirt on. And the final part of the only linear section of this tutorial teaches you about climbing. For such a central mechanic to the game, I was surprised to see it wasn't really required for the vast majority of the tutorial. But I think it was necessary to have this here for players to learn that, yeah, you will be able to climb. And also about the stamina meter, but the stamina meter is something you'll kind of play around with, learn your limits with everything, and I don't know, it's just a neat way to tell players, hey, you can climb things. And then, this opening shot of the entire world ahead of you to explore, it's amazing. Everything you see in this shot you can go to, and that thought alone was just amazing to me. It ends with the game directing you towards this old man as your point of interest, which is similar to how in the original NES Zelda, this cave was the only point of interest. And yeah, good luck. The game kind of lets go of your hand and guides you where to go, but you're never forced to go there. Zelda will give you a point to go towards after a little while, but there's really nothing stopping you from just exploring around the area and killing some enemies. But let's take a look at the first intended thing you're meant to do. So you go to the old man's shelter, I guess? This is kind of sad. And you find 2 different types of apples. You find a regular apple hanging from a tree and a baked apple by the fire. From this, it's shown that a regular apple has half a heart, whereas a baked apple has 3/4 of a heart. And right here, the game has subtly taught you that cooked food will heal more than regular food. Talking with the old man as your only real point of interest so far reveals information. I mean, there isn't much incentive at this point in the game but information, so having this source is definitely something that's interesting. He brings up the Temple of Time, which you'll probably want to know for later, hint hint, and you'll probably notice this axe nearby. It's a proper weapon. Now before this you may have picked up tree branches or a torch, but this is definitely more so a weapon. And there's loads of examples like this throughout the tutorial of, hey, here's a new type of thing to learn. In fact, before you reach the first point on your map, there's an enemy with a bow, and you'll probably have to kill it before you actually get to the point of interest marked on your map. Travelling down the path nearby reveals a weak enemy, and this may be where you first learn how to use combat. You'll either learn how to use it or die trying. That's something I love about the starting area. You can die. This sounds weird, I know, but trust me on this. Other tutorials tend to make sure the player is constantly safe, reassuring the player that they won't be frustrated, that they know what they're doing at all times, and that they won't put it down after 10 minutes. But Breath of the Wild wants to trust the player. Everything in this tutorial has an end goal that the player wants to go towards. Go to this old man for information, go to the point on your map because where else will you go? Gather the 4 spirit orbs because this hang glider looks really cool. Through this, the tutorial can be like a harsh teaching lesson whenever it wants to be, as long as it's fair. It's a bit of trial and error, but you're always learning as you die. For example, when you bring up this first tower from your point of interest on your map, you'll be very high up, and without any indication where to go next, you'll want to go down. Yeah, take the stairs, idiot. Although the game does let you die, it's also strangely safe in regards to the rest of the game. There are no blood moons, so enemies will permanently be killed as long as you're still in the Great Plateau, and the weather is either cloudy or sunny, nothing else. You'll not have rain, which will prevent you climbing at any time. There's no horses, and there's no extremely powerful enemies, with one exception that you have to go out of your way for. So generally, you're learning just the core elements, while also having a lot to discover after this. You're enticed to explore even after this. The shrines are also built in a very interesting manner. It teaches you the buttons to use the runes you're given, and then it gives you the tools you need to complete the shrine, but never tells you how. Magnesis is the first shrine you're directed towards, also known as the shrine. You're told you can lift magnetic objects, and you can lift these panels, which are also metal. Then you go through here, and these metal boxes are heavier than the stone boxes, so you can either lift this one out of the wall, collapsing it entirely, or you can turn around, take this nearby metal box by itself, and yeet into it. You have these gaps in the floor, so why not take this panel, which you know you can lift, and travel across these gaps by using it like a bridge. And keen-eyed players will also notice that this chest up here is made of metal, so come on down. All of this seems obvious, but that's the thing. The game doesn't tell you that it's obvious. You realize that's obvious. Everything's here, so figure it out. But my favourite part of these shrines are actually outside of them. Just outside of these shrines are a prize for whoever can figure out that these runes also have regular applications in your normal world. So outside the Magnesius shrine, there's a metal chest in the water that you couldn't get before, but you can pull out with Magnesis. and outside the Cryonis trial, you'll have a wooden chest that you couldn't lift out otherwise, but you can't lift out with the ice block that you can just summon at will. That's kind of weird now that I think about it. In fact, the game doesn't even directly tell you how to get to these other shrines. You'll have to go to the top of the tower that you summoned, and the game tells you how to use markers so that you can mark them on your map. I remember I marked the 3 other shrines on my map, and then I went and marked one on the volcano in the distance as a point of interest. I made it a goal from here that at some stage of my journey, I would actually make it to that point on my map, and 30 hours later, I actually made it there, which was really exciting for me for some reason. It was really nothing of interest when I got there, but it was my point of no interest. But yeah, you're shown where these are, they're marked on your map, but you have to mark them on your map. Although you don't even have to mark them on your map, you can just go there without knowing how to do this. Also, as a quick note here, the tutorial is really neat going back as someone who's played the game before. There are a lot of neat things to do when you know what to do. These guardians, for example, blocking the bomb ruin shrine, are actually one of the biggest dangers for a new player. They kill you in one shot. So you have to either climb on top of these walls and carefully platform over, or attempt to run past them. But experienced players will know that you can deflect their lasers back at them with precise timing. So experienced players will destroy these guardians, whereas new players will probably die to them. I think that's a super neat feature. And another thing I find really interesting is the snow section. This snow section will be really cold, as marked with a little indicator down here, and you'll have to find some way to not freeze to death. There are numerous ways to get past this section. The first is to find this small side quest involving spicy meat and seafood fry. There's a missing ingredient, which is just kind of obviously any kind of meat. But, you know, it's a tutorial on how to find new recipes, so I guess it makes sense. And if you show this to the old man, he'll reward you with a warm doublet, meaning that it will protect you from the icy cold area that's around you, and you'll not need to cook any food. But alternatively, you could find this archway, see a fire with a cooking pot and spicy peppers all around, and you could learn to cook that if you cook with spicy peppers, you get a cold resistant dish, which can give you a set amount of time to travel through the freezing cold environment. You could just stock up on cooked food, which heals you, and just run through this area as quick as possible with no cold resistance at all. Or you can go completely out of your way, not cook anything, and just use pieces of wood and use the areas of heat around them to heat up whenever you need to. It's more likely you'll just learn how to cook than anything else, but that's the thing. You don't have to cook anything. Even in the Snow Mountain area itself, you could go around this freezing ice water, or if you have a decky leaf, you could use this boat to reach the other side. And if you do this, you're rewarded with easy access to this waterfall cave, revealing some super powerful items for this point in the game. The entire tutorial is built like this. It's built upon options, it's built upon going out of your way, giving you all the tools you need, whilst not telling you how they're used. Do you want to sneak around an enemy base, slowly take out each enemy without being noticed, which will allow you to avoid taking damage and losing your weapons? Or do you want to charge straight in, test your combat prowess? Do you want to use a bow and snipe from a distance? Maybe dodge attacks and learn about flurry rushes? Do you want to go into this forest area at all? A quarter of the tutorial area is completely optional. And if you go here, you're rewarded with a hidden boss, which is just terrifying. Enemy encampments, your first look at Korok seeds, an enemy base where you can be the god of hellfire. Burn, you fools, burn! I think the key point of this tutorial comes at the end of it. The old man reveals everything to you and tells you to go to the Temple of Time, a place he indicated to you before as a place of interest. Inside, you may find a great fairy statue, and you'll find your reward for 4 spirit orbs is either a new heart container or more stamina. It's still your choice. On top of the temple, you're given more information about what happened to Hyrule, the evil aura surrounding the castle, about yourself, about Zelda. Your reward for completing the tutorial is information about the world, your main motivation from the start. Also, the hang glider, I love this thing, it's so fun to use. Whee! You're given your next point of interest, being Kakariko Village, and you're also given your main goal of the game. The only necessary thing you have to do from this point onwards, defeat Ganon. And you're on your own. Just like the start of the game, you're given your end motivation, an entire world to explore, and where you might want to go next. You're given total freedom and intended routes, but not necessarily your route. Breath of the Wild emphasizes freedom throughout its entire playtime, but what interested me the most looking back on it was how it did so from the very start of the game. The game does an excellent job at having freedom and world building, and 60 hours in, I can say this game does a phenomenal job of giving you freedom.
And yeah, that was the tutorial of Breath of the Wild. No, I actually did go back and see what it would be like if I tried it on Master Mode, a very much harder version. I mean, it's still the tutorial, so obviously it's not that bad. Okay, I'm not good at games, but you see my point here. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is just an example of a lot of amazing things, but especially a good tutorial. And when I first played through the game, I didn't even realize it was a tutorial. So that's a good example of the tutorial right there. So yeah, maybe I'll look at more of Breath of the Wild, but it's like an 100-hour long game, and I like sleep. I have this little plush though, and it's adorable. It's Mini Link. He's my son.